Welcome back to the Martial Arts Mania podcast. I'm AJ.
And I'm Gavin.
Hello.
Hi.
This is Trippy. This is officially the first video, so we're going to be a little all over the place. Not sure where to look exactly. Kind of feel like Ricky Bobby. Don't know what to do.
What's up, everybody?
Yeah, don't know what to do with my hands. So the funny part is our previous recording platform, we just did audio, but we had video for us, so we can talk directly to each other, but we're always doing multiple things. Like sometimes Gavin's at work and he's such a boss. He's doing business stuff on the side with his coworkers. I'm usually drinking 3 or 4 different drinks, like water and protein shakes, not alcoholic drinks. All right.
Yes.
I mean, come on.
And you know what?
Tuesday afternoon.
And also, one thing I always do is I always put a joke name in as part of
I didn't even think about that. At least today's is appropriate and not anything obnoxious. But yeah,
well, yeah. And for the record, it's usually obnoxious, not inappropriate. It's usually like siphoning off kung fu movie names and throwing them in mixed with mine. But
yeah, and on top of that, usually our notes are written all over the place, or I have them on my phone, so you'll see me scrolling on my phone maybe. So I got to come up with a better system for that. Also, usually I am totally not presentable. So this is me presentable, and people are probably like, he looks like a bum. So you should have seen me before usually, because I've 9 times out of 10 just finished a workout in my garage here in Fresno, California. Yes, it is the summer. So yes, it is 100 degrees out there. So I'm usually drenched in sweat. I showered for you guys today.
Wow.
So you're welcome. You're welcome. And so I do have my tea, and I thought I should use my Chinese text.
Cup of love.
Says love. Yeah, cup of love. Well, I love you. And then I do happen to have a protein shake today. You'll see me sipping on. And I do happen to have my Yeti full of ice water. So good to stay hydrated.
And what, pray tell, are you wearing? What brand is that?
It's funny you should ask, Gavin-san, because I thought it would only be appropriate for today, our first video episode, to be wearing
the Martial Arts Mania podcast t-shirt designed by none other than Union Designs, Herman Baltazar.
That is right. The coolest gear on the planet. That's right. A lot of their stuff, or I should say even most of their stuff, is designed by martial artists for martial artists. Kick-ass martial arts inspired gear. You can check out their website. You can find them on Instagram, the Union Designs. They are our one and only sponsor at this point in time. But you know what? If we were to have only one sponsor, I'm glad it's them. Because honestly, as I jokingly say, my wardrobe is usually one of 2 brands, not counting Under Armour, because that's what all my training gear is. But my casual streetwear is usually either the Union Designs or Roots of Fight. So it's actually the hat I have on right now, Roots of Fight. And hey, maybe they'll want to be a sponsor of ours one day.
You never know. Why not?
You
know what? If I work there, come on, let's do it.
Awesome. I think they're technically a Canadian brand.
Oh.
Well, or they're based out of New York, but I'm not sure. Like upstate New York, like real upstate New York, maybe. So
I'll take your word for it.
All right. And what shirt do you have on?
I have on, well, I guess it's the Reverse Mission of Justice shirt.
It is.
Yin Yang.
Oh, nice.
Purchased it was a gift from my family when I was visiting Hawaii. We came across a store that had a Yin Yang shirt. So
very cool.
Figured in honor of the family, in honor of one of the great straight-to-video films.
I like it.
Mission of Justice. Good choice. Yin Yang.
And I am in my office space, so this is where I will be recording 99.99% of the time, unless Gavin and I are recording in person together. But this is my usual space, my Zen den, as I like to call it. And you are at home today.
I guess I'm in my Zen den. But yes, I'm at home today, usually recording from the office, so unless you're in town, and then we record from here. But trying out a new schedule with work, taking Tuesdays as my day off, and so we're recording from home, seeing how this works.
Yeah.
So you don't have nothing, just bright light behind me.
Right. So we'll have to figure that one out. But as far as the videos go, It'll probably take me at least an extra day to get this on YouTube, but hopefully in the future they will drop the same day on Wednesdays when our audio version drops. But anyways, enough talk about all of that. What's new with you, good sir?
Well, new work schedule, new school year just launched. Uh, I think everything's going well. Everything's
Okay.
going well. It was nice and crowded yesterday. Great to have families back. Some families, some of the students already came up and asked when's the first kickboxing class with Sensei Sugarfoot,
Ooh.
and I'm like, well, usually it's near the end of the year, so they get a little time to wait. But it was nice to see their excitement in
But if
general and specifically for kickboxing.
That's right. But if you are interested in training with our mutual sensei, Peter Sugarfoot Cunningham, the kickboxing legend, you can find him at Peterson Grapplers 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, morning classes, and in the evening. So that's Peterson Grapplers in Santa Clarita,
Is it?
California.
And what about on Tuesdays? Any place we can find him these
On
days?
Tuesday nights, you can typically find him at Yakubian Muay Thai in Chatsworth, California, one of the best Muay Thai gyms in the state of California, but definitely in Southern California. And I believe on Thursday nights, he's at Ace Martial Arts, which
Ooh.
is run by Sensei David, who actually just won a Waco kickboxing title in Puerto Rico.
Well, that's fantastic.
Very good for him. He is a friend of mine, an old trading partner. So congrats to you. But anywho, so that's what's new with you. Same old with me. Just the day-to-day grind, training, job searching at the moment. So hopefully something comes to fruition soon.
I'm sure it will.
Anything in terms of martial arts movie news today?
I feel like you might have some information for us, or no? You've got your finger on the pulse.
What news are we referring to?
I don't know. Now I'm confused. Whoa! I'll yield the floor.
I really didn't have anything to bring today. Last episode, we had the big news about the House of Fangs, the Bruceploitation film that Michael Wirth and Frank Jang are putting together. So definitely everyone go and check that out. There's an Indiegogo campaign for it right now. House of Fangs looks awesome. But other than that, is there something I'm forgetting about?
Did we talk about the animated series that's coming out?
What animated series?
There's an animated series.
The Bruce Lee anime one?
But that was a while ago. We talked about that
a while ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there's a new trailer that dropped for that.
Oh, okay. That's it. There we go. There's some martial arts movie news right there.
Yeah.
Gavin's like, oh man, oh man. But yeah, otherwise, I definitely believe that obviously a lot of the lack of new news is due to the fact that this ongoing strikes are still ongoing. That is the Writers Guild and the Screen Actors Guild. So, I mean, there's not really much new that can be announced. But yeah, we'll just keep our eyes and ears open. As for on streaming and any new releases, can't think of anything off the top of my head at the moment. But I've just been catching up on some Zatoichi personally, because I have the Criterion box set, and there's 23, 24 movies in the original run. The funny part is, right now I'm still subscribed to all my streaming services, and I've said I'm going to kind of do a purge soon once I finish watching the current series I'm watching, and take maybe 3 or 4 months without any streaming services. And I'm like, oh, that'll be the perfect time to watch my Zatoichi movies. Yet I've been watching them quite regularly right now. I just can't help it. They're just the perfect in between, screening to put on. But not only that, they're just all so well made, and they churned those bad boys out. And I'm just like, wow, it's, I'm not going to call it my new favorite film series, because I feel like James Bond is, always got a special place in my heart, but Zatoichi's right up there.
It's a great film series, and I don't know. I really, there are a few episodes that just stand out. Not episodes, but a few films in the series that just stand out. And I think I told you I used to work at Video Action, one of the video stores in downtown Los Angeles, and what Video Action used to do on the side, or not as a side, but as one of their main uh, I don't want to say main sources of income, but main areas of focus was releasing Japanese films in America, and they owned the rights to the Zatoichi series, and were would had the whole line that they would
Whoa.
release. So Video Action, my good friend Greg Yokoyama used to be the name behind Zatoichi in America, and when it was on video, and maybe even through the initial DVD release. I know that the rights, when it comes to a lot of those films, floats around and gets shopped around, I should say.
Right.
So,
and obviously the box set is through Criterion, so
Yeah.
of the highest quality, and obviously they are not releasing anything they did not properly get the rights to.
no,
So-
of course. Yeah, I don't mean to not to imply that others, but yeah, early on, the first wave or second wave of releases in the US market was through Video Action.
Well, there you go. That's a cool little trivia fact. And I think it is definitely, I have a newfound appreciation. I shouldn't say newfound, but I have a deep appreciation for those individuals that are re-releasing a lot of these classic martial arts films, whether it's Hong Kong cinema, Taiwanese cinema, Japanese, etc. Because finding the rights to some of these films can be a huge hassle. And Michael Wirth has talked about it on the Clones Cast, the Bruceploitation podcast, how a lot of times they'll find a pristine, perfect copy of the film, but they have no idea who has the rights to it. Or they get the rights to it, they purchase it legally, they own the rights, but they can't find a full-fledged copy of the film. So it's definitely a hassle. And I feel like in the early days of DVDs, a lot of these films were getting released without people necessarily having the rights to them, including probably this film we're going to be talking about today. So let's segue into our next segment we usually do. So that would be our movie quote. So what do you got for me today, good sir?
So today, I've got one quote for you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are ready,
I'm ready.
here
Hit
we
me.
go. You could step on it all the way to New Orleans and still fly.
Ooh, so it's a drug reference. I know
It
that.
is.
Yeah, okay. It's like
But
I
it,
can
it's out. It is out of context,
right.
because you would not expect this person to ever have a drug reference unless maybe he were playing a character that was undercover.
Right. It's because the second you started saying it, I realized, oh man. Can you do one of your classic voices or accents or anything to go with this one?
I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to do the lead up to it.
Okay.
What do you think? You could step on it all the way to New Orleans and still fly.
Oh.
Don't think maybe not major acting range with the voice.
Okay.
Always.
I feel like I just watched this recently, or maybe we just watched this recently.
We may have spoken about it recently at bare minimum.
Man, you know what? Let's not dwell on it too much. Let me know. What is it?
Okay, it's Walker, Texas Ranger. Chuck Norris, Walker undercover. He's gone to Florida.
Oh, it's the Kathy Long episode.
Yes.
There we go. Okay, we did just discuss this recently. So, a classic episode of Walker, Texas Ranger, one of my all-time favorite TV shows, if not my all-time favorite. And Coach Kathy was a coach of mine while I was living in Los Angeles. So I got to go and train with her on Wednesday evenings at the Inosanto Academy for a few years. And that was awesome. She's an amazing, just overall person, amazing human being, but also not only was she a phenomenal fighter and pioneer for female kickboxers, she's also an incredible coach. So if you ever have the opportunity to train with her, I suggest you go do it. But anywho.
And where would one train with her now?
That is a good question, actually. She relocated to the Seattle area, so I'm not sure. But I know she's been working a lot with, or started working with Team USA Kickboxing and doing work with their fighters. But I assume she's still based out of the Seattle area. I'm not sure. Maybe I'll check in with her. I haven't spoken with her in a couple months. We text every once in a while. So, excellent question. I'll try to give everybody an update on that. But are you ready to talk about the movie we're talking about today?
I am ready.
Okay, excellent. So today we are talking about the 1980s classic ninja samurai karate jiu-jitsu action film, Shogun's Ninja.
Starring.
Starring a plethora of amazing actors, but particularly two of my all-time favorites, including the late, great Sonny Chiba, my hero, one of my greatest inspirations in the martial arts. I unfortunately do not have a poster up of him yet, but I am actually commissioning someone to make one for me. Yeah. So, the late, great Sonny Chiba, and of course, Haruyuki Sanada, aka Henry Sanada, aka Duke Sanada, and Tsushiomi, one of the sometimes forgotten pioneers of female martial arts cinema, and a lot of familiar players from that era, from the Sonny Chiba action team and so forth. But yeah, so this episode's a few weeks in the making. It is this movie has been a favorite of mine for about the past 20-something years. So I first saw this movie when, I've mentioned this before, I was one of those people that was reluctant to switch over from VHS to DVD. I was like, no, forget that. I've already got my whole collection of VHS, and I don't want this new technology. I was like a 60-year-old man when I was 12. But, in the late 90s, I held out, and finally by the early 2000s, it was becoming a bit of a hassle even to get the movies you wanted on VHS. But then probably the main reason I switched over was the ability to buy these box sets of kung fu movies, martial arts movies, where you'd get literally about 20 movies, maybe 4 discs or 5 discs, so like 4 on a DVD or 5 on a DVD, of a bunch of old school kung fu movies, sometimes Japanese cinema, not chambara, like older, more 70s, 80s style ones, Taiwanese kung fu movies, where, as I was kind of mentioning before, probably they didn't even have the rights to them, but, who was really going to be monitoring them? And they were usually pan and scan rips from obviously old VHS copies, so usually they weren't of very high quality. But that was kind of what got me to switch over, because I'd be like, wait, this DVD pack is $20 and I get 20 movies. That's a killer deal. So even if there was, of the 20 movies, only like 5 that you really wanted to watch, it was still a pretty good deal. And I don't have any of the cases anymore, I don't think. Otherwise, I'd bust it out. I still have a lot of those old DVDs where it's got like 4 or 5 movies on them. But this film was in one of those packs, one of the original ones I bought. And this was probably right around when I was getting into Sonny Chiba, because when I first saw Sonny Chiba, as I once again mentioned before, it was the Street Fighter taped off of TBS Superstation at like 2 a.m. It was after I taped Dragons Forever, and it was a highly edited version of the Street Fighter. So,
and if it was on TBS, it was not at 2 a.m. It was at 2:05 a.m.
Oh, there you go. Exactly. Yeah. Or especially if there was a baseball game earlier.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah. But so by this point, I had now re-seen the Street Fighter series, fell in love with it, fell in love with Sonny Chiba. So I see this film, and Haruyuki Sanada, obviously I already knew just from, Royal Warriors and some of his other work. This was kind of right as he was about to hit it, like, I'd say big in America, but he's obviously a well-recognized character actor. But, this was right before The Last Samurai, right, before Rush Hour 3, right before him just being in all these different American films. Because now I'd say most people probably would recognize him. Obviously, most recently he was in John Wick 4. But so I saw this movie and just thought, this is some crazy stuff. Now, a lot of the other films that, the Japanese Action Club or the Sonny Chiba Action Club, the films that they took part in and they made, obviously you have the straightforward like karate martial arts films in the 70s, but in the late 70s, early 80s, they started doing a lot of these blended genre, samurai, sci-fi, fantasy type pictures. Some of them were very heavy on the fantasy side. Think more like Zoo Warriors as a comparison for Hong Kong cinema. Others were more straightforward kind of action or adventure movies. This one is one of the more straightforward action and adventure movies, but not without its very random, weird elements, which we will get to soon. So when was the first time you saw this film?
I just finished it about 5 minutes ago. No, so the first time I saw this film, I definitely rented it from the Mitsuwa grocery store. They were inside the plaza in Torrance. There was a Japanese video store. So there was a period where I had just entered the realm of Sony Chiba. So for me, it's also one of my early Sony Chibas, or at least where I was aware he was in the film.
Mhm.
Because as we've discussed before, there are times where we watch films unaware of who all these players are. And my introduction was probably through to Sony Chiba was through Shogun's Shadow, the Ken
Oh,
Ogata Ken film, which
yeah.
is extremely bonkers. But I enjoyed that film so much
The one
that
you were watching earlier today.
yeah, I just like doing
Yeah.
getting a taste of that film again, which is, like I said, completely bonkers in
Which we
all the
both
right ways.
highly recommend, by the way. And Shout Factory released a Sunny Chiba box set of remastered Blu-rays, and that's in there. Go buy that. Yeah, you won't be
Yeah,
disappointed. And that film
that's
is it's bonkers.
it's bonkers in all the right ways. So that I think my order of watching was that film, then a few other films. I think there's a Japanese movie called Itsuka Gira Gira Suru, something along those lines, that also has Sony Chiba in it. And then from there, so it may have been that film, then Shogun's Assassin, and then Shogun's Ninja, which
Excellent.
is the most Hong Kong-esque film, perhaps,
Hmm.
outside of Hong Kong, or I should say outside of Hong Kong, Taiwan, outside of Hong Kong funding, because
Okay, so you're talking about today's movie.
this movie,
Yeah,
yes,
there's
because
definitely
wow, like this, so I hadn't watched it since then, and then when you brought it up, I rewatched it. Obviously, it's been showing up as I've been sending you screenshots in our Twitter thread a lot as well. Like, hey guys, have you seen this? This is a great film, and uh, it's just so funny how it's like popping up all over the place. I don't know if it's because it's now back on Tubi, or because you brought it up, it's now I'm paying attention to it. But what a fun watch it was back then, and what a fun watch it was again over the last 3 weeks when we were going to originally record.
And I just got to say, Sifu Alex Richter at the Kung Fu or the Kung Fu Genius podcast, always having the sirens in the background because he's like, it's New York. Guess what? Gavin's in Venice Beach, equally as filled with police sirens and random homeless people fighting and breaking into cars. So you may hear some noise in the background once in a while. But today I figure we're going to go right into the plot. And you know what we've never thought of doing for some reason? Is actually just reading the blurb off of the DVD if we have it. So yes, I do have the actual DVD for Shogun's Ninja, and this is part of the Sunny Chiba collection. So obviously, the original version I watched was in one of those big DVD packs. It was not a terrible quality version, which is, I believe, probably the one you watched on YouTube, but it was actually dubbed in English. And so I would love to rewatch the classic English dub of it. So I really hope somebody does a Blu-ray release for this. In fact, the movies on the Sunny Chiba collection, somebody else must have the rights. And because I can't imagine why they haven't done a Blu-ray release for all the Masoyama films he did. For example, this one, like Shogun's Ninja, G.I. Samurai. It's probably because somebody else has the rights to them and they're just holding on to them for some reason. But this would be an amazing one, and I would love for it to also have the classic English dub. But I'm going to go ahead and read the blurb directly from the back of the DVD. Are you ready, good sir?
I am ready.
Okay. Hideyoshi, played by Asao Koike from G.I. Samurai, a power-hungry warlord, sends his war commander, Shiranu, played by Sunny Chiba, to the Momochi Fort to destroy the Momochi clan. Makes sense, the Momochi clan is at the Momochi Fort. The Iga Ninja Group, and to obtain its hidden gold. 2 daggers tell where the hidden gold is located. One is in the possession of Sandayu Momochi, head of the Momochi family. But who has the other? That should be a question, by the way, and it was a period, hence why I wasn't ready for that. But who has the other? Amidst the fierce war with the Koga Force, another ninja faction, all the Momochi clan is killed except for Takamaru, played by Hiroyuki Sanada, Ninja Wars, who escapes overseas. 10 years later, he returns for revenge. So they pretty much took most of that blurb is based off of the first 5 minutes of the film. and then they just finish with, and then he returns for revenge. So that's the basic setup. Yes, the Momochi clan is being wiped out by Sonny Chiba and company. The young warlord's son, Takamuro, escapes, ends up in China, becomes a master of Chinese kung fu, returns 10 years later as now a young man in order to restore his family's glory and find the other dagger, because he has one, with the hidden map, or excuse me, the map to the hidden treasure. So then they would have the funds to probably, restart their clan as well. So yeah, that's the basic premise. It's a setup for a lot of very cool, innovative martial arts action, both in the striking department, so hand-to-hand, grappling department. There's some great scenes of just straight kind of traditional jiu-jitsu. And then also, we obviously get some great weapon work in this film. Some great sword play, especially on the part of Sonny Chiba, and then some great knife play from Haruyuki Sanada, and a lot of innovative techniques too. So that's something this film utilized a lot of. And I think it's definitely, there's a lot of comparisons, like you mentioned earlier, to Hong Kong cinema, and particularly maybe even Taiwanese cinema at that time. It was around the same time that the ninja films were going to start becoming huge worldwide, whether it was Canon Films in America doing the Shokazugi ninja films, or Taiwanese cinema with Alexander Lo Ray and a lot of the ninja films he did. Obviously, there was ninja-themed films going on in Japan. So there's definitely probably going to be borrowed elements amongst all of them, or just some weird synchronicity where like they were all kind of thinking the same thing. What would ninjas do? So in this film, we get grounded, real action. We get some wire work. We get some spider ninjas, I think is what they are, like ninjas that can climb trees and fly through the air, sort of like kind of like a bat, like not like straight flying, like they have superpowers.
It's different wire work in Japanese cinema, particularly in Sonny Chiba cinema, than we might find in the wire work or the wire fu, but not just wire fu, but like the tree top floating that we see in a lot of Chinese martial art films. It's funny because it's floats, but it's like a faster float, if that makes sense. I don't know. It's more like angular. And again, rewatching this film, rewatching Shogun's Shadow, there's a lot of that unique wire work, which is directed by Sonny Chiba, as I understand it, as the action director. I presume that would fall under his purview. But the floating it's light but direct, and it's.
Well, I'm trying to think of the animal that it compares to. What's the animal? And I'm terrible with
like
animals.
A panther.
No, that jumps across and like spreads its wings. It can't really fly.
Oh, like a monkey. There's like monkeys with wing arms.
Exactly. What? See, I was always so bad at, even in elementary school, I was, for some reason, I just didn't really care about animals. Like, some kids are obsessed, but I can't think of the name of it. But like those monkeys with wings is what they look like when they kind of float across. Whereas with like wuxia, the wuxia pen, like traditional wuxia films, the wire work is more like, it's like a gentle, like they're kind of running across the trees. Think Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. It's like supernatural abilities. These are more like it's an extension of, maybe like, look, we can kind of really do it. And then later you've got some people doing some Tarzan action where they're straight up swinging between trees. So
it's I don't know. It's a lot of fun to watch. It's definitely different. It is, I think you hit the nail on the head. It is kind of animalistic, but like mythical animalistic, where they've become the animals. It's I don't know. It just works in these films so well.
Agreed.
This whole film. I mean, this. We were talking about the different elements, the different types of fighting styles that we see in this film, and we also have some great training sequences.
That
it's like Sanada doing what nobody else has been able to do outside of Hong Kong, except for maybe Jean-Claude Van Damme and his Kickboxer series.
Yeah, so that's one of the main things this has, is a straight up like training montage, like a martial arts learning training montage, which makes it very comparable to the traditional kung fu film. But on top of that, the whole time you can't help but think that Haruki Sanada, and this was his first starring role. He had been appearing in movies since he was a kid, like off and on. Before he was involved with the Japanese Action Club, and because he's a protege of Sonny Chiba, and then as a young teen, he was also in The Executioner, the Sonny Chiba film where he plays a young Sonny Chiba. So he was trained under Sonny Chiba, but then like went back to school. Like Sonny Chiba encouraged him to stay in school and finish all that. And then, so this was his first starring role. And you can't help but think he was supposed to be Japan's answer to Jackie Chan.
Well,
I mean, he's got Jackie Chan's hair. He's got a ripped physique. He's got that boyish charm they really try to utilize, the playfulness, acrobatic abilities, insane martial arts skills, and he sings the main theme of the film.
yes, which we hear a few times in the film.
Yes.
No, and when you say he has the Jackie Chan hair, this is like young master era Jackie Chan hair that I don't know. It's if you're trying to do Jackie Chan knockoff filmmaking, you would want Sonata in that film because he just fit the bill as far
this
as
is
like
1981, the year after the Young Master. So,
and Young Master was a big hit in Japan.
Oh yeah.
So it's definitely hitting the market at the right time. And like I said, this was the most Hong Kong-esque film that I've seen outside of Hong Kong or outside of Hong Kong filmmaking funding filmmaking. However, whichever order you want to put that in. But this Sonny Chiba with this film, he with his action direction took all the elements that we love to see in Hong Kong films, particularly at that time in Japan, would be the Jackie Chan films, the training sequences, the comedy, the shooting techniques sort of a little wider, and brought that into a Japanese film, but then also added a lot of the Japanese fighting styles that you don't see in the Hong Kong films, particularly with the swords, I love the horse riding sequences. And so if this film were to hit outside of the Japanese market, then they're also getting an export of Japanese style martial arts in the film, which is what I love. It's incorporating the best of from other markets and then like packaging that with Japanese martial arts so that the world is not just exposed to what they can get in Hong Kong, but something they can only get from Japanese cinema, and specifically only from a Sonny Chiba film.
Well stated. And there was definitely mutual respect there. At this point, Sonny Chiba hadn't really done Hong Kong cinema. He did one film, Soul of Chiba, which was, I think, was like a co-production, really weird movie. You can watch it. I think it's on Tubi or Prime, with one of the commercial options. But it wouldn't be till like the 90s that he would start appearing once in a while in some Hong Kong films, and then particularly in The Storm Riders, which I believe he was actually nominated for Best Supporting Actor at the Hong Kong Film Awards. But there was definitely a mutual respect between Sonny Chiba and Jackie Chan, so much so they were aware of each other, where I do believe there's a picture of them together, but it was long rumored that Jackie Chan made like a cameo appearance, I think, in Ninja Wars. And if I'm not mistaken, even in his first biography, which I have behind me, it lists him as doing stunt work in there, but that rumor's been kind of debunked. But obviously, I'd imagine there was a mutual respect for that for one another. There's been all sorts of rumors. There was rumors that Sonny Chiba was supposed to be in the next Bruce Lee film before he died, the one that they were trying to, get George Lazenby in. But supposedly George Lazenby was supposed to be in Game of Death, and I don't think they were trying to put Sonny Chiba in Game of Death. So once again, rumors spread like wildfire. But that being said, there was obviously Hong Kong cinema was definitely heavily influenced by Japanese cinema, in the sense, even with all the way back to the Shaw Brothers bringing over Japanese cinematographers to work in Hong Kong, and Bruce Lee's own Bruce Lee's personal influence from the Chambara films, and being aware of such series such as Zatoichi, which we were talking about earlier. So it goes back and forth, right? And it works even with American films and Hong Kong cinema being inspired by some of the stunt work of like the James Bond films and kind of the hard hitting stunts. And then later, America being inspired by Hong Kong. It goes back and forth, right? Like creativity, ingenuity, and so forth. But let's get back to talking about this film in particular. So there's some action in the opening sequence, which, as I read off the back of the box, mostly explains when the Momochi clan is pretty much wiped out. We get to see some cool wire work with Sonny Chiba and his two henchmen. He has two henchmen, I believe. One is mute and one is deaf. And they do some cool little wire work thing where they jump on his shoulders and they're doing kind of like a Muppet Man thing where there's three of them, not wearing a trench coat, but and we get some little stuff like that. But it isn't until we get our opening credits and we have Takamura returning from China and making it back to Japan. And the first action sequence is him stopping some soldiers from. I guess he kind of goes into like what would that be, like a strip show? But it's that like a feudal Japan style, like the girls are dancing on stage and kissing each other and stuff. What do you know what kind of theater that is? Or
I'm not sure. It's probably something in the Yoshiwara district, but I will say that I don't remember seeing that sequence this time around. But
it's
maybe
it's the whole opening action sequence where it's our first introduction to Takamura's like fighting skills.
Maybe I just didn't pay attention to the background then.
Oh, maybe. So pretty much they're trying to grab the girls and then he stops them. And so it starts off with him using, I guess, what would supposedly be some chin na, like Chinese joint manipulation on the guy, like, ah! And then he throws the guy. He does what actually looks more like a Shorinji Kempo style throw, but that would make sense because Shorinji Kempo supposedly came from Shaolin Kung Fu. So, and then it eventually goes to the outside, which is where we also get, and this was something that just tripped me out as a kid, and I think this is why I was so fascinated by this film, why I was so enthralled, because it was so kind of counterintuitive, the music choices for the action scene. So he gets set up, the guys circle him, and as opposed to some even instrumental or rock music, it's like a smooth jazz, like and you're like, okay, I don't know why I like this, but I do. And then that's when we get kind of our first real fight scene, and we get to see Sanada-san's incredible kicking abilities. But the other cool, innovative thing they do in this scene is this is one of the first times you saw Sonny Chiba utilize it in Karate Warriors, but in all honesty, I think it was better suited for Sanada-san's kicking abilities than even Sonny Chiba, who had a much harder style. Is they do this cool effect of slow to fast to slow motion, which for most people, the first time they saw this was probably in Brotherhood of the Wolf. Because I remember when Brotherhood of the Wolf came out when I was in high school, I'd already seen this film and be like, oh, that's amazing. But I've already seen that in Shogun's Ninja. But so that's the effect we're talking about. It's a very cool slow motion speed up and then slow motion finish. And it just really accentuates the action.
And I didn't think that I was not sure where that technique was necessarily introduced in cinema, but to think that maybe it came through the mind of Chiba makes sense. Again, maybe I can't think of a film that used that beforehand, but what it really does, this technique, is it shows the beauty by going slow, so the audience is able to actually see the full extension, the full motion, the full movement. And then by going fast, all of a sudden you feel that power.
Yeah.
And then switching back to slow, it's just so then it returns to it allows us to like soak in that power. It's really a great filmmaking technique for action scenes. And I would love to like research where this started, or even check out
well, I don't know the name of it. I remember asking when I was in undergrad. I think I asked some, like one of my more tech savvy friends, like, what is going on here? And I know they're playing with the shutter speed. So they're probably playing with the frames per second that they're filming and the shutter speed. And it's like a combined element, because it's not just, it's definitely not just the frame per second and then speeding it back up and slowing it. It's also something with the actual lens and camera that does it. So it's really cool. I mean, and obviously Sam Peckinpah is given credit for kind of being the first to utilize slow motion within action. And then John Woo was directly inspired by him. And then maybe it was just, I don't know, maybe like one day the Japanese Action Club was just playing around with the camera and did it on accident, or like, hey, that looks cool. But either which way, we only get it in that first opening sequence, and that's cool. You don't want to overdo things like that. But yeah, that first scene introduces us to Haruki Sanada now as a young man, a badass with incredible martial arts abilities. And so he escapes the authorities, but he draws the attention of a few individuals who follow him down. Ends up they're his childhood friends from the Momochi clan. They
Uh-huh.
have been kind of formed a Robin Hood style group, and I forget the name. They're given a name of a singular individual because the authorities think it's just one person. But they've been stealing gold. They've been trying to get ready for his eventual return to where the Momochi clan can be lifted up again. But one of their members, he doubts the return. I mean, he knows that it's Takamuro, but he doubts
He
Takamura's abilities. He thinks,
yes.
this kid, let me try my jujitsu on you. So they have a little bit of a friendly match where at first his jujitsu is, I wouldn't say getting the best of him. I think Takamura's testing him out. So he's doing some traditional jujitsu throws, which would now be recognized probably as judo techniques. But eventually he tries throwing Takamura, and Takamura flips in the air, lands on his feet. Flips in the air, lands on his feet. Then he starts attacking back and then easily defeats his friend, earns his friend's respect. They're all happy. Yay. So once again, so just another cool sequence. And this one we also, of course, Takamura's shirt gets ripped off and we get to see Haruki Sanada's ripped physique, which we technically saw, I think, in the opening credits when he's rowing the boat. But here we really see it on display. Just a very lean, sinewy-like physique. Very comparable to Jackie Chan. Like, I'd say like halfway between a Jackie and Bruce Lee. Just a very athletic physique, which seems to be built more so through athleticism as opposed to like weightlifting or anything like that.
No, absolutely. And I'm glad you that sequence it's short, but man, it really stands out. It's a lot of fun. And when the jiu-jitsu throws or the judo throws, when they're happening, they're beautiful. But the moment where Sanada continues that flip and lands on his feet, just is a turning point. Again, like we've talked about this before, where we've referenced Willy Wonka in the beginning, where Willy Wonka, Gene Wilder's walking out with the cane and then does that flip. It's a moment where all the characters around him understand his level of ability, and it's a really fun sequence. And it reminds me, I know we're referencing a lot of Jackie Chan here, and there's good reason to reference that, but it reminds me of the sequence sort of between Jackie Chan and Yuen Biao in Winners and Sinners. It's nice to have fight sequences in martial art films that aren't always life or death. It's nice to have like friends testing each other, because it story-wise, but also action choreography wise, it allows the characters to push themselves and allows the audience to see make sense of why they're not like then going for the jugular. They're really just testing each other, and through the test we get to see the full range of Sanada.
Yeah, and then shortly thereafter we're also introduced to the ninjas of the Momochi clan, which are the Spider Ninja group. They are ninjas that wear straight up like camo, not black, like camo. And that's where we get a lot of the wire work and cool sound effects of the, and that's a terrible reenactment of it. But imagine as they climb up the tree. So it's very much from behind. You'll see the arms and legs doing this, but it's obviously a wire carrying them up, or the as they go across.
Those two guys, by the way, are so fun to watch. The two monkey-esque guys.
Yeah. But there's also some great work, like eventually when some of the guys get killed and they just fall from really high.
Yeah.
It's either they do a great job landing directly on a pad we can't see, or it's good kind of wire work carrying them down. Yeah. But yeah, there's some very cool, intricate, as we said, playing with aerial work and wire work. But yeah, so eventually what happens is our newly reinstated Momochi clan, they are betrayed by the wife of one of the members. So they're captured. But Takamura manages to escape. So then the rest of them are going to be all boiled alive for the public. Takamura comes to rescue them. Some of the other Momochi guys in the crowd come to rescue them. A bunch of them get killed. It's like a bloody war.
This sequence is so fun.
It's a lot of fun.
I know you just described talking about boiling people and people getting killed. I'm like, this is fun. But the sequence, the way it's shot is so fun. You have people kind of jumping into the dirt sand, and then they all of a sudden they jump where they are into the ground, and then it's almost like Jaws, where this like ball of sand is moving forward because our protagonist or ninja is under the ground, moving under the ground, and then they pop back up. It's the way they shoot it. It's a ton of fun.
So Takamura manages to save a few of them. A few of them get killed. So that's where we have to talk about the elephant in the room of this film, which is the next sequence where they're mourning the loss of their brothers. And so they're burning the bodies, which is part of like traditional Japanese culture. And we get a very, very interesting sequence from Haruki Sanada where he performs what can only be described as an interpretive jazz dance rhythmic gymnastics karate kata. And you may think, wow, that sounds a little convoluted. Well, let me tell you, it's definitely out there. So some jazz type music starts playing, but obviously with a more serious, solemn tone. And we see, and there's no sync sound because it cuts away to the other members of the group like crying as their friends are dying. But we get Haruki Sana kind of starts to bob his head, right? And then he starts to hit his fist. And then he just like goes into jazz hands. And you're like, okay. And then he goes into a jazz spread. But then he starts doing karate punches. And you're like, okay. But then he goes into jazz hands again. And then he starts doing flips. You're like, wow, it's really impressive. But the consistency of his performance here is a little all over the place. I don't know if this is traditional Japanese culture or what's going on. Okay, he's doing karate. Cool. Oh, the jazz hands again. Okay. Oh, flips. All right, that's cool. Jazz hands. Oh, okay. Karate kata. Jazz hands. And I remember even as a kid in the early days of IMDb, when reading about this film, like everyone would bring it up, like, what is with this sequence? And I have to agree, it is definitely random. But even as a kid, I was like, all right. Okay, it's weird, but I'm not hating it, but it's definitely kind of weird and I don't understand it, but okay.
It's one of those kitchen sink sequences or resume sequences. That's how I like when I see something like this. If it doesn't work, it's a resume sequence.
Well, okay,
and if it does work, it's kitchen sink.
I think you're onto something. I think they're like, all right, so we need to have him perform something out of anger. Maybe he can start doing some karate. I can imagine Haruki Sanada being like, well, I'm actually classically trained in jazz dance. Oh, snap, you are? Wow, man, imagine if he could do some gymnastics too. Actually, I can do rhythmic gymnastics. Which one would you like me to do? Which one? Baby, do all three. Do all three. Okay, let's see. So, yeah, if anybody wants to learn a really cool kata, watch that sequence and put that all together, and I will be impressed.
Yeah. Good point, because there are a lot of YouTubers out there who redo action scenes. Let's redo this action scene and just remember it's juxtaposed or set against a funeral for one of his friends or mentors.
Yeah, there you go. And okay, so shortly thereafter, and I do have some of these names written down there, they're defeated, right? The Momochi clan, they thought things were going well for them, and now not so much, right? A bunch of the ninja have died, a bunch of their friends have died, they're weak, they're hurt, they're falling apart, when suddenly there is the arrival of some sort of master who straight up jumps off the top of a mountain. And this sequence is pretty badass. You see this anime-looking master on the top of a mountain who calls out to Takamura, and then he throws his own staff down, then jumps off. Then the camera pans out, and we get like a slow motion shot of this stuntman literally jumping off the mountain. So you can only assume there was some sort of because you don't see him actually land. There's probably some sort of crash pad, but I mean, this is a huge jump. Yeah, it's like
it's how many feet was that jump?
Oh, I don't. It's like jumping off of a building. Like if someone was, unfortunately, like I think the opening sequence of, or not opening, but the sequence of Lethal Weapon where they jump off the building and they have the giant crash pad. It's like as high as that building, if not higher. So, and then the badass part is then when it cuts to him actually landing, he lands and then catches his own staff, does like one of those kind of quick little anime looking runs, and then he shows up and they're like, "Oh, well, who are you?" And let's see here, I have the character's name written down, and it's supposed to be. Let's see here. Oh, they have it spelled a different way, but there they say Hakunsai Ozawa. And so then they're like, oh, Hakunsai sensei. And so from the research I've done, and I think they just maybe even pronounce his name differently, I think it's supposed to be Tozawa Hakunsai, who is the creator of Gyoku Ryu, which was a school of Japanese martial arts that specializes in koshijutsu, shitojutsu, and ninjutsu, which would make sense. Now, when you look up the actual name that they use, I think it was used a lot in lore or, maybe even comic books or like anime or something. So maybe there's a specific cultural reference that Japanese audiences would have gotten. But so really the only difference is rather than Ozawa on Wikipedia, I found him as Tozawa. So maybe it is just like a soft T. So yeah, they're like, Hakunsa Sensei, oh! And they obviously recognize who he is. And the funny part is he tells Takamura, stop being a girl, because he's like crying and emotional. I'm like, ooh, that's a little outdated, but okay. And then that's when he takes them on. He says, like, pretty much, I am going to reinvigorate you. You will rise again, and the Momochi clan will be victorious.
Well, I love that he tells him to stop being a girl because he's crying. But like, if he were there a few minutes ago, he would have seen like some funky dancing to think like, hey, maybe stop dancing, mourn.
Well, imagine if he had showed up then, like, Takamura, never mind. And just bounce. He's like, never mind, there's no hope for the Momochi clan. But yeah, and that's where we get our cool training sequence, which at first is set to our theme song sung by Haruyuki Sanada. Da, 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 da. And no, I do not speak Japanese, so I'm not going to try to sing in Japanese. But Gavin speaks in Japanese. Let's go.
But I will not try to sing in Japanese.
Oh, yeah. Okay, but so yeah, and right out the get-go, like, obviously the Takamura character is already a phenomenal martial artist, and we've already seen his physicality, but my God, it starts off with him. And I remember as a kid just being so blown away with him doing like what we used to call in Taekwondo, like leg races, right? And Haruyuki Sanada's legs are going like straight up, like Yuen Biao status flexibility, right? And then they're doing some aerial work where they're kind of doing like trapeze type stuff. And then like one arm pull-ups. He's doing kip-ups, the kind where you jump backwards as high as you can, land, and then flip up, jump back. Like, this is the kind of stuff that for like Yuen Wah status, right? Like Yuen Wah doubling Bruce Lee and Enter the Dragon. Yes. But just phenomenal athletic ability. So obviously he wasn't raised in the Peking Opera, but he did start training at such a young age and growing up within being like a protege of Sonny Chiba. Obviously gymnastics was a huge part of that because Sonny Chiba himself was a world-class gymnast that was training to compete in the Olympics before his back got hurt. And that's when he decided to focus more on martial arts. And lucky for us, that's the way it went. But yeah, so that's where we get them starting to learn jujitsu from this jujitsu master who is hardcore to say the least. But I also love his whole get up, his whole outfit. It's, the long white beard, the long white hair, which once again, I see as kind of like, anime inspired, like, or, even, or more manga inspired really at that time. Like you would have easily seen a character like this in Lone Wolf and Cub, but also, comparable to, once again, the Kung Fu movie where we get the old Kung Fu master with long hair. But I think this is just kind of a carryover between probably a lot of Asian cultures when it comes to the sensei or the shifu or anything along those lines.
Great point.
Okay, I was like, would you agree?
No, absolutely. And I mean, the sequences we get, again, like for me, there's so much fun in this film, but what stands out time and time again are just all the training sequences. They're just so much fun to watch, and they're they're very impressive. And then so there are more sequences that come up after this. I don't know if you're hearing it in the background. And normally this is our first time doing video recording, but Otis is breathing pretty heavy. I got to go spend a minute with him. Not a minute, but like a 30-second.
Go for it,
there's a way to add a marker right now if you want to like know where to edit out.
I think we're good. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll be right there.
Okay. So for those of you that don't know, Odie is Gavin's dog. Odie's a fine dog, but he has a little bit of anxiety issues. So occasionally, Gavin has to give him some extra TLC. That includes petting him. That includes putting on YouTube videos for him when he leaves the house. Squirrel videos, to be exact. Okay, all right then. So, yeah, we've got our jiu-jitsu training sequence. And we should mention also that there's a female character that has been tagging along with them. That was a friend of Takamura's when they were kids in the Momochi clan. After the Momochi clan fell, she was raised by none other than Hattori Hanzo. That's right. Hattori Hanzo, the fictional character throughout Japanese cinema, comic books, obviously carrying over into American cinema with the Kill Bill films. He's kind of an antagonistic character. So he wants her to steal the knives with the maps on them so that they can get the hidden treasure. But she, although has a great love for her adopted brother of Hattori Hanzo, cannot betray the Momochi clan. So she's caught trying to steal the sword, but then wants Takamura to punish her. The Jujutsu master shows up and says, Takamura, you must cut her. And then she's begging, please cut me. And he's like, no, I won't do it. So that's where he actually has to fight his own Jujutsu master and beats him, stabs him. And he's like, oh, Sensei. And like a true badass, the Sensei is pretty much like, you are ready to face the world. And then just walks off, like, obviously, but bleeding to death. But yeah. So, and then from there, we segue into our finale, which Hattori Hanzo ends up coming to save them at one point. So he becomes a good guy. But not only that, we also get Tsuchiyomi's character has popped up. She pops up earlier in the film and is like trying to find Takamura. But then like doesn't get to meet him till around this point. And she was pretty much his girlfriend in China. It was her father that took him in and raised him and taught him Shaolin martial arts. And she obviously is in love with him. And in a in a lot of films, Japanese films, Tsuchiyomi's character, and this time she's just playing 100% Chinese. Like in the Sister Street Fighter series, she's supposed to be half Chinese. There's kind of this almost like obsession with making her a Chinese character. She also, once again, performed some lines in Mandarin, some absolutely just terrible Mandarin. I'm like, did they just decide not to have a language expert on set or a dialect coach? I'm not sure. I've heard this actually comes sometimes, and maybe you can fill us in on this as someone that lived in Japan. Like in Japanese culture, like a lot of times I've been told they actually feel like they speak better English than we do in America. But from what I've heard is like grammatically, their English is like perfect when they write it and so forth. But obviously spoken is not of the highest quality. I'm not sure.
Well, I have two thoughts on that. One is I just watched the next Karate Kid, and in that sequence they go to the temple and everyone is supposed to be Japanese nationals, and when they speak Japanese, you can tell that it's not spoken by Japanese nationals, right? And so that's a lot of times people think they can get away with that because they don't realize the audience over time becomes larger.
Yes.
With regard to English, I will say that when I was at Ushita Chugako, so Ushita Junior High School, I was in the English class. I thought my English was just fine, and I got 40% on one of the exams, and then after that, and it was like I was using conversational English instead of the perfect grammar English.
Oh, I see.
So I didn't realize that was what was being sought. But regardless, to say the school principal and my mother came to a conclusion that during English class, Gavin can study more Japanese, and then at home he'll do his correspondence course for American schools.
I can see where that comes from, because even with some of the Chinese they speak in this film, it's some of it. Obviously, I have the subtitles there. Mine was in the original audio, which once again, this time Japan was always filming with sync sound, unlike in Hong Kong. But I can't even make out what she's saying in some of it. Even like some of it I can, but for example, she at one point like says, "Oh, I trust her," the other female character, and it's just like, which would be like, 我相信她, right? But she's like, 我相信她. It's like she it's like there's no trying to put on anything with tones or pronunciation. It's just, and in her final dying sequence where, I know, spoiler alert, she gets killed in the finale, but it's like she's saying something to Takamura in Chinese. I can't even make out what it is. Yes, she's supposed to be dying, and she's but it's just so, I'm like, wait, what? I replayed it like 3 times, and I'm like, I cannot understand a word she's saying. Whereas a lot of the other stuff, that's the one I said before is the one I specifically remember, simply because I usually use the term xinren as opposed to xiangxin, but which both mean like to trust or to have faith in. But and there were some other ones, same thing. It's just like, okay, I hear what she's saying. It's just a very poor pronunciation. But yeah, anyways, that's Tsuchiyomi's character. So now we're segueing. We're going into the finale. It's the Momochi clan versus Sonny Chiba and his group. And we've got Hattori Hanzo and some of his ninjas show up to help them out. We've got some other characters in there. We've got Takamura's homeboys helping out. It's a great finale. There's horseplay, as Gavin mentioned. There's arrows. There's swordplay. There's knives. There's nunchucks. There's 3-sectional staff because Tsuchiyomi's like bodyguard guy comes with her. He's an expert at the 3-sectional staff. Tsuchiyomi does some badass nunchuck work, like double nunchucks. And then she does some kind of Tarzan action where she's flying through the trees upside down, hanging from her feet using nunchucks, which ends up being her demise. I saw that one coming. There's guns. Obviously, there's guns, people getting shot and killed. It's a fantastic finale. We could spend a lot of time talking about it, but we unfortunately don't have a lot of time. So, yeah, you get a great finale. You've had a bunch of action delivered throughout. It's not a short film, but it doesn't feel overly long because, once again, we get all these great action sequences. You have such an amazing soundtrack, the cool jazziness, what may seem like anachronistic in a sense because of the time era and this and that. It doesn't. It just works for some reason. I've always enjoyed it. I've always dug it, the jazziness of the soundtrack. And Sonny Chiba as a villain is, as much as I love him as a hero, he was just so good as a villain too. And his voice, and that's the other thing I love is, as I mentioned, how this is sync sound because we get them actually performing their own dialogue, which for Hong Kong cinema, we never had until the early 90s. And even up until the mid 90s, there would be certain films that still weren't done with sync sound. It still wasn't their original voices, obviously. I mean, cause I was watching Iron Monkey the other day, and that's not sync sound. That even though films at that point had already started to get filmed with it, but because Sonny Chiba just has the voice of either an anti-hero, like he was with the Street Fighter, or a villain.
I know, and sometimes it's so unique to see his face, and I have to remind myself, oh, he's playing a villain, because he does both. He does both sides of the coin so well. His range of going from anti-hero to villain, completely believable. And yeah, I'm really glad that it is his voice. Also that it's Hiroyuki Sanada's voice as well, which is really, so for me, it's weird seeing his young face. And I know we talked about this before, his young face with the voice, because the voice is, he grew into that voice.
Yeah, 100%. You nailed it. He's like an Al Pacino, where as he got older, his voice evolved, and the voice of current Haruki Sanada is so different than young one. It's like you would not recognize it. Like when you watch The Godfather, and Al Pacino, he's kind of talking like this. Then you get to Son of a Woman, and I'm just getting started, which I mean was probably a lot of smoking and boozing too. But it's a night and day difference. So you're right, you nailed it. But Sonny Chiba was consistent. You go to his youngest roles, and he still had that samurai style voice.
Yes.
But and also because once again, we know what a phenomenal martial artist Sonny Chiba was in terms of not just being trained for the screen, but being one of Masoyama's original Kyokushin karate black belts, being a Shorinji Kempo black belt. Once again, the rank I'm not 100% sure off my head. He has high ranks and all these. Being a judo black belt, and I believe he was also a black belt, or the equivalent in kendo or maybe kenjutsu. And you really see that here with some of his sword play, just his basic stances and poses, like when he holds it, you just see the authenticity in it.
Absolutely. I love watching Sonny Chiba's sword play.
Yeah, because and it's
so
crisp.
Clean, so crisp. Exactly. Yeah. So clean, so crisp. And you get the power, and just being on a set with so many other people who know how to do that sword play, it's, I don't know, it feels like perfection. And, that's another thing, like, obviously I reference Shogun's Shadow, and that's not the film we're talking about here. But what I love about watching Sonny Chiba's career is, and we've talked about this before, early on in his films, like there was a fight sequence in the woods in one of his earlier films. He has always been right at the cutting edge of innovation for action filmmaking. And not only that, not just innovation, but I almost want to say perfection. He works really hard. And there's one sequence we didn't really get into. It's one of my favorite sequences. It's where Hiroyuki Sanada is escaping, and he's on the rope tied upside down and sort of swaying back and forth. It's a phenomenal sequence for Sanada, but it's so well shot, so believable. And it kind of feels like something that goes not just back to, say, a Jackie Chan movie, Young Master, a year or two prior. It goes back to the Errol Flynn films or the Zorro films, where it it just feels like a moment of classic Hollywood, but done with mature cinematography.
So pretty much he's being tortured. It's when he and his friends get captured. And I mentioned he escaped. He's hanging upside down from a rope. At this point, he's all by himself. They've been torturing him all day. And he starts to use his own momentum to start swinging because he sees a candle lit. Because once again, this is feudal Japan. They didn't have electricity. It's lit. The room's lit by candles. So he gets his own momentum going from nothing. And what he does is eventually gets up to the candle, bites it with his mouth to grab it, then does a full body sit up to burn the rope to escape. But the crazy part is they could have easily done a cut or this a way to show that no, he does the actual swinging. It takes him a few tries, but he swings up and grabs this lit candle with his mouth. And this isn't like a fake, plastic candle. It's a real, he could have burned his face or caught his hair on fire or something, but he manages to swing, grab it with his teeth, and then swing back. And then obviously they cut after that, but still you're like, holy crap. If they told me, hey, AJ, you got to put your face into a flame and then grab said flaming candle with your teeth. Try not to burn off and singe your eyebrows, catch your long, beautiful Jackie Chan locks on fire. Good luck. No, I would not do it.
It's a fantastic sequence, fantastic performance, but also, like you said, the long shot, the way it's cut or not cut in sequences. It's masterful filmmaking with performers who can do what you would have wanted to see in the Zorro film. I don't know. At that point, we're talking 1981, so like 40 years prior, 50 years prior.
You would eventually get something pretty close about 17 years later in the late 90s with The Mask of Zorro, one of my all-time favorite films.
Exactly. That's exactly yeah.
And on that note, let's wrap up this episode on Shogun's Ninja. So, Language Corner, do you have something for us today?
I do have something.
Okay.
It's a very simple word. Ninjas operate unlike me with the light in the background. I will be watching this video and seeing how I can adjust. I think I've been moving around a little bit. No, it's very bright. I apologize to our first-time watchers. Don't tune us out. Next time it'll be great. But like I said, light in the background. Ninjas operate in the shadows.
Okay.
So today's word is shadow.
I like it. Let's hear it.
Kage.
Oh, nice and easy.
Yeah.
Kage.
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 Wait, so what's the second syllable? Is it a G-E-T? Is there
K-A-G-E. Kage.
Oh, okay, got it. So there's no T at the end. So kage.
Correct.
Kage. Kage.
Yes. And like sometimes you would refer to someone who has a shadow, who has something hidden. You would say, so-and-so, kage ga aru.
Kage ga aru.
Ga possesses it, makes it possessive. Aru has, so that person has a shadow. But today's word is kage, shadow.
Kage. Gavin, kage ga aru.
Oh, AJ-san, kage ga aru.
Hey, I like it. Thank you. Okay, my man, this has been fun. First video. Hopefully it'll be up by like Friday. Who knows? Maybe tomorrow. Maybe it'll be super simple for me to put this all together. But anywho, thank you for all of our now YouTube viewers. Hopefully we'll be in the tens of 20s by next year.
Yes, welcome to the light of Martial Arts Mania podcast.
Excellent. All right. Till next time. Peace.
Adios.